Is the solar industry abandoning silver? Well, that is the question rattling around every stacker's kitchen table right now. And today I'm going to give you the brutal truth about it. No sugar and no spin. Solar has been one of the biggest silver stories of the last decade. So if the panels are walking away from our metal, you deserve to know what that really means for the stack sitting in your safe. Here is what got everybody's attention. Silver demand from the solar panel industry, what the fellows in suits call photovoltaic demand, is forecast to drop about 19% this year. 19%. That is a big number, and it landed at the same time silver itself has been climbing, sitting up around $66 an ounce as I record this, up roughly 10% over the past month, and pressing against a 6-week high. So you have got a strange picture. The price is marching up, while one of the metal's headline buyers is pulling back. A lot of folks saw that headline and felt their stomach drop. And I get why. Most of us buying silver are in it for the long haul. We are not day traders flipping coins for a quick buck. We are the kind of people who tuck metal away for our kids and our grandkids, so when somebody tells us a major source of demand is shrinking, and not just for 1 year but maybe for years to come, that is worth stopping and looking at hard. This is one of the few things that could genuinely bend the silver demand picture over a long stretch of time. And I never want to be the guy who buries his head in the sand and pretends bad news is not bad news. I'm Hank, and I've stacked physical silver and gold for 35 years through every boom and bust. So if you want to stack the smart way, consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. So let me walk you through exactly what is happening in solar, what the real numbers say, and why I am still sleeping just fine at night. Before I get into the weeds, let me tell you why I take a story like this seriously instead of waving it off. In 35 years of stacking, I have watched 100 scary headlines come and go. Silver is finished, gold is a barbarous relic, the mines are running dry. Nobody needs metal in a digital world. I have heard every one of them, and I am still standing here with real weight in my hand. But the way you survive all those headlines is not by ignoring them. It is by digging into each one, separating the honest facts from the fear, and asking whether it actually changes the reason you bought in the first place. That is exactly what we are going to do with this solar story. No panic, no cheerleading, just the plain arithmetic of it. Let's start with the report itself, because the details matter a whole lot more than the scary headline. The research shop Metals Focus, the same group behind the World Silver Survey, laid it out plain. The global silver market remains structurally tight, with elevated prices and a supply deficit that keeps rolling year after year. Mine production is growing a little, recycling is growing a little, but both are constrained, and neither is keeping up. And inside that tight market, the solar piece of silver demand is falling sharply, driven by cost pressure and by what the industry calls thrifting, which is just a fancy word for using less of something to save money. Now picture a chart in your head. Every single year, the world installs more solar panels than the year before, more rooftops, more big desert farms, more panels going up across China and India and everywhere else. That trend is expected to keep right on going in 2026 and well beyond. Solar is not shrinking. Let me say that again so it sticks. The solar industry is still growing, but the amount of silver going into each panel is dropping, and dropping fast enough that total solar silver demand is sliding even while the panel count climbs. Here are the hard figures. Back in 2024, solar swallowed up around 200 million ounces of silver. Last year that fell to about 186.6 million ounces. That was roughly a 6% decline. And this year it is forecast to fall all the way down to about 151 million ounces. That is the 19% drop everybody is talking about. So in the span of 2 years, solar's silver appetite is shrinking by close to 50 million ounces a year, even as more glass and aluminum goes up on more roofs than ever before. Let me make sure that sinks in, because it is the single most important idea in this whole video. Two things are moving in opposite directions at the same time. The number of panels is going up, the silver per panel is going down. And right now the downforce is winning, so the total pile of silver headed into solar is shrinking. If you only hear the first half, that solar keeps growing, you think silver demand is safe forever. If you only hear the second half, that panels use less silver, you think solar is walking out the door entirely. The truth lives in the tug of war between those two, and a smart stacker keeps both hands on the rope. So what is actually driving this? It comes down to price and technology working together, hand in glove. When silver was cheap, nobody in a panel factory lost a minute of sleep over how many milligrams went into a cell. It was a rounding error on the cost sheet. But silver did not stay cheap. As the price climbed, silver jumped from about 8 to 10% of the cost of a solar cell to over 20%. When one ingredient doubles its share of your costs, you can bet the engineers get called into a room and told to fix it, and fix it they did. The solar sector answered with a two-part plan. First, make each cell more efficient so it produces more power. Second, cram less silver into every cell. They went to thinner paste, they changed the print pattern that lays the silver down, and they reworked the cell design so a panel can, in theory, work just as well with a good deal less of our metal in it. That is the whole game right there. Same electricity, less silver, and they are getting frighteningly good at it. Let me take you down the two technical roads they are traveling, because this is where you separate the folks who actually understand this story from the ones just reading headlines out loud. The first road is called progressive thrifting. That means slowly, steadily refining the paste recipe and the cell architecture to shave off silver a little at a time. The star of this road is something called silver-coated copper paste. Think of it as a copper core wearing a thin silver jacket. By the fourth quarter of last year, pastes with only 10% silver content entered high-volume production, 10%, and just 2 years before that, those same pastes were running around 40% silver, so they cut the silver share by 3/4 in about 2 years. Now you might ask, why not go all the way and drop silver completely on that road? Here is the reason, and it is a good one to tuck away. Copper cannot sit on the outside of the cell because copper oxidizes, it corrodes, it degrades, and your fancy panel starts failing. So they still need silver on the outer surface to protect against that. They need it, just a whole lot less of it. Silver is still doing a job copper simply cannot do out there in the weather. Keep that in your back pocket because it matters. Think about what that paste really tells you. Cutting the silver share of that paste from 40% down to 10% in about 2 years is not a lazy drift. It is a full-on sprint by some of the sharpest engineers on the planet. When an industry moves that fast, you take it seriously. But notice the wall they keep running into. No matter how clever they get, they cannot scrape the last bit of silver off the outside of the cell because copper out there in the sun and rain simply rots. So even on the most aggressive version of this first road, silver keeps a foothold. It is demoted from the main ingredient to the thin protective coat, but it is not fired. That distinction is going to matter a great deal when we add up the final numbers. The second road is called substitution, and this is the bigger threat if you want to look at it honestly. Substitution means actually replacing silver with copper using techniques like copper electroplating and pure copper paste. These methods are aimed straight at solving the oxidation and the sticking problems that stopped copper before. If they crack it, electroplating could drop silver loadings below 1 milligram per watt. That is a stunning number when you consider where things used to be. But, and this is a big but, the yield and reliability problems have not been solved yet. When you run these processes at massive scale, too many panels come out flawed, so mass production of the copper-only approach is unlikely this year. The industry expects mainstream cells to fall below 5 milligrams per watt by 2027. So the direction is clear, but the timeline is not overnight. And that is the honest heart of this whole thing. Solar installations can keep growing for years and years while the silver demand from solar keeps falling because of thrifting on one road and substitution on the other. Some projections say it takes roughly 5 years for the industry to switch primarily over to copper, and the clock on that started ticking now. So if we already saw a 19% drop this year, a fair-minded person has to ask what 2027 looks like, and 2028 after that. Let me put it in terms a working man can feel in his gut. Not long ago, about 1 out of every 5 ounces of silver pulled out of the ground was headed into solar. 1 in 5. Today that is closer to 1 in 6. And I will be straight with you, I think it keeps heading the wrong direction from there. 1 in 7, then maybe 1 in 8. It would not shock me to see it drift toward 1 in 10 before this copper transition is finished playing out. That is a real shift, and I am not going to stand here and tell you it is imaginary. It is not. So here comes the question that actually keeps folks up at night. Does all of this mean the silver price is about to fall off a cliff? Does a shrinking solar buyer drag the whole metal down with it? And my answer, after 35 years of watching this market do everything under the sun, is absolutely not. Let me explain why. Because this is the part the fear peddlers conveniently leave out. Silver is not a one-trick pony that lives and dies on solar. Solar is just one seat at a very crowded table, and while solar is steadily easing off, let me say it plainly, other parts of the industrial world are stepping on the gas and demanding more silver, not less. Think about the artificial intelligence boom. Those enormous data centers going up all over the country are packed with electronics, and electronics run on silver. Think about electric vehicles, each one using far more silver than a regular car ever did. Think about all the other electronics woven through our daily lives. Those uses are climbing, and here is the kicker. Most of them cannot thrift or substitute their way out of silver nearly as easily as a solar panel can. In a lot of high-performance electronics, silver is doing a job where there is simply no good replacement. Let me sit on that AI point for a second, because I think it is the most underrated part of this whole story. Every one of these giant data centers feeding the artificial intelligence boom is a warehouse full of servers, switches, connectors, and circuit boards, and silver is the best electrical conductor money can buy. When you are moving that much data and burning that much power, engineers reach for the metal that performs, and that metal is silver. There is no cheap copper shortcut in the guts of a high-end server the way there is on the face of a solar panel. Same story with electric vehicles. A modern electric car can carry a couple of times the silver of an old gas guzzler, spread through its battery management, its motors, its charging systems, and all its sensors. As the world puts up more data centers and rolls more electric cars off the line, that silver demand climbs, and it climbs in places where thrifting is a whole lot harder to pull off than it is in solar. Now layer on the fact that silver has been running in a supply deficit for 6 straight years now, 6 years where the world used more silver than it produced. 2026 is on pace to make it a 6th consecutive annual shortfall, on the order of 46 million ounces coming up short. So even with solar pulling back its share, there still is not enough silver to go around. Read that twice. We are draining the above-ground stockpiles year after year, and the solar slowdown, as real as it is, does not magically flip that equation into a surplus. It just changes which mouths are doing the eating. Let me put a finer point on the price picture too, because I want you working with today's real numbers, not last year's. Gold is sitting around $4,376 an ounce as I speak, and that is actually a pullback from the all-time high it set above $5,000 back in February. Silver hit its own nominal record up near $121 an ounce in January before it pulled back, and now it has climbed back to that $66 area I mentioned. These are not the sleepy prices some of you started stacking at. This is a different market, and the high prices are exactly what is forcing all this thrifting in the first place. I want you to really feel the size of that deficit, because numbers on a screen can go numb on you. 46 million ounces short in a single year, and this is the 6th year in a row we have come up short. Stack those years on top of each other, and you are talking about a mountain of silver that got pulled out of vaults and stockpiles and used up, metal that is not coming back. Those above-ground reserves are not bottomless. Every year the market runs a deficit, the cushion gets thinner, and a thinner cushion means the price gets twitchier and quicker to jump when demand surprises to the upside. So when somebody tells me solar is easing off, my first question is simple: easing off from what starting point? Because we were already short, badly short, and shaving one buyer's appetite does not fill a hole that has been growing for 6 straight years. It just slows how fast the hole gets deeper. And here is another thing the doom crowd skips right over. This copper switch is not free, and it is not instant. Retooling a panel factory, qualifying a new process, proving that a panel built with copper will still be cranking out power in 20 and 30 years, that all takes time and money and a mountain of testing. That is exactly why the experts peg the full switch at around 5 years, and why the pure copper approach still cannot be mass-produced this year despite all the effort thrown at it. Yield problems, reliability problems, panels coming off the line flawed, those are real bottlenecks, not excuses. So the decline in solar silver is going to be a slow grind stretched over years, not a cliff we fall off next Tuesday. And a slow grind is something this market has all the time in the world to absorb, especially with AI and electric vehicles pulling in the other direction. And that is a point worth chewing on. Metals Focus itself has noted that silver, up near $80 an ounce, quote, really encourages a very aggressive move for thrifting and outright substitution in favor of copper. In other words, the higher the price climbs, the harder the engineers work to design our metal out of their products. It is a natural pressure valve, but here is what those same folks tend to skip, that thrifting takes years to execute, the deficit is here right now, and the other buyers at the table are not slowing down for anybody. So the metal can keep grinding higher even while solar trims its order. So let me tie a bow on it and tell you where I honestly land. As a fellow who has stacked physical silver and gold through gold at $200 and silver at $4, through crashes and manias and every lie the paper crowd ever told, this decline in solar demand does not worry me. I mean that. It is a genuine shift, and I respect it enough to keep a close eye on it and report back to you as the numbers roll in year by year. I am not dismissing it, but a shift is not a catastrophe, and this one does not change the core reason I hold real money in my hand instead of paper promises. Here is the bottom line, plain as I can make it. The solar industry is not abandoning silver out of spite. It is doing exactly what every industry does when a raw material gets expensive. It uses less and hunts for a substitute. That is capitalism doing its job. But solar was never the whole story, and it is not the whole story now. Silver demand across the board is still robust, still broad, and still bumping up against a supply that cannot keep pace. The deficit is real, the industrial hunger beyond solar is real, and the metal in your safe is still the same honest weight it was the day you bought it. Let me leave you with a way to think about all of it that has served me well for decades. When you own a real physical thing, a coin or a bar you can hold in your palm, you are not betting on one buyer or one industry staying hungry forever. You are betting on the metal itself, on its usefulness across 1,000 different jobs, and on the simple fact that the world keeps needing more of it than it can dig up. Solar was a wonderful tailwind for silver these past 10 years, and I am grateful for it, but I never bought silver because of solar, and I am not going to sell it because of solar either. The reasons I hold real money are older and deeper than any single industry trend. Sound weight, no counterparty, no printing press that can conjure more of it out of thin air. Those reasons do not change because a panel factory swaps some silver paste for copper. And think about the irony buried in this whole story. The reason the solar folks are working so hard to design silver out is that silver got expensive. That is the market telling you the metal is scarce and valued. Cheap things do not get engineered around, expensive things do. So the very same headline that is supposed to scare you is actually proof that silver climbed high enough and got tight enough to force some of the smartest companies in the world to ration it. That is not the signature of a metal in trouble. That is the signature of a metal that has become too valuable to waste. Read it that way and the fear turns right around on itself. So do not let a scary 19% headline shake you out of a position you built for the long haul. Understand it, respect it, and keep it in proportion. Solar is using less silver per panel. That is true, and it will likely keep being true. But the world is still short of silver, and it is going to stay short for a good while yet. I have watched this metal outlast every doomsday story thrown at it, and I expect it to outlast this one too. Keep stacking the smart way. Keep your eyes open, and I will keep bringing you the truth as I see it, boom or bust. That is what I promised you 35 years ago, and that is what I am still doing today.